Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning to you here in this physical sanctuary. Good morning to you who are joining us in our online sanctuary. Welcome to the Unitarian Society of Santa Barbara. Welcome into this loving community of seekers where we strive to live with integrity, nurture wonder, and inspire the actions that transform us and transform the world. I'm the Reverend Julia Hamilton, and I'm delighted to have you here with us this morning. I'm delighted that you have taken the time out of your life to nurture your spirit, grow more compassionate, maybe expand some new horizons here with us together in this wonderful community. If you're joining us for the first time, or maybe your first couple of times, we would love to get to know you better and welcome you more personally. We have a newcomer orientation on the second Sunday of every month in the front office right across the courtyard. And of course, everyone's welcome to join us for coffee and tea and conversation in Parish Hall after the service, or stick around online for our online coffee hour. It's bring your own coffee, BYOC online, unfortunately. But we'd love for you to get connected there as well. There's a link to the connection card online and in your order of service. If you want to find out more about this congregation, you can drop that in the offertory plate when it goes around, or stop by our welcome table. We also have a Path to Membership class coming up on the 27th of this month. It's a Saturday morning opportunity to get to know a little bit more about this congregation, about Unitarian Universalism, meet some other newcomers, and consider the question of whether this might be the spiritual home you've been looking for. So if you've been attending for a little while and are interested in continuing the conversation, I hope you'll talk to Angie in the front office to sign up for our Path to Membership class. I want to highlight a couple of things that are going on in the congregation right now that need your participation. We are entering the next round of our outreach offering nominations. Every month we partner with a project to give away a portion of our offering, and some of those projects and programs are determined by you, the congregation. So there's forms you can fill out to nominate projects or programs here, and you can talk to Gail. Where's Gail? Right there during coffee hour if you have any questions about that process. So start to think of where you see your values coming to life in the world and nominate them to be an outreach offering partner. We also are going to be, I want to highlight that this is Martin Luther King weekend, which means tomorrow there is a slate of community activities to participate in, and I encourage all of you to consider how you can spend some time this weekend honoring the work and legacy of Dr. King. The program starts at 9 o'clock at De La Guerra Plaza. There's the Unity March at 10 o'clock, and at 11 o'clock a program at the Arlington Theater. So you can stop by and participate in any one or all of those activities hosted by the Martin Luther King Jr. Committee of Santa Barbara. And now I invite you into a special invitation for a program of connection here at the congregation. Connection circles are opening up for their next round, and I want to invite Mike Risto forward. Mike, come on up and tell us a little bit about what the connection circles mean.
Good morning. Wait till you hear this story that I heard on Connection Circle last week. Well, you're not going to hear it because we covenant not to share those stories outside a Connection Circle. If you want to hear them, you have to be there. What I've learned is that there are thousands of years of life experience in this congregation, and I love the phrase, I am enriched by their giving. I'm enriched by their hearing. And when we get a theme for every month, what we're going to share in Connection Circle, sometimes I think, does that resonate with me? But typically, when it's my allotted time to speak, it's hard to shut me up. I think you will all find that. So if you haven't been in a Connection Circle before, or if you haven't been there for a while, I think it really, really is of great benefit to learn of the wonderful resilience of all the members of this congregation. And you don't really know exactly when it's going to be or what it's going to be that matters to you, but I guarantee you, you will benefit by that experience. So Carol Switzer will be in Parish Hall this morning, and the deadline is a week from tomorrow. Please sign up. I look forward to seeing you there. Thank you.
I invite you now to take a breath and settle yourself wherever you are. Maybe Allow the opportunity to put aside that to-do list you've been carrying around and give yourself the gift of being present to this moment together as we ring our bell and let the sound connect us.
Good morning. If you're joining us in our online sanctuary and you have a candle or a chalice to light, please do so and type into the chat the name of your street or town. Although we cannot see the flames, we know they're burning bright in our community. The words for this morning's chalice lighting come from the poet Gwendolyn Brooks. Martin Luther King Jr. A man went forth with gifts. He was a prose poem. He was a tragic grace. He was a warm music. He tried to heal the vivid volcanoes. His ashes are reading the world. His dream still wishes to anoint the barricades of faith and of control. His words still burn the center of the sun, above the thousands and the 100,000s. The word was justice. It was spoken. So it shall be spoken, so it shall be done.
I invite us now to rise, to sing together song number 298, Wake Now My Senses. Rise in body and spirit. Join us wherever you are. We are going to sing all 5 verses of this hymn. So by the time you get to the 5th verse, you can really know the tune. And I think you'll understand why I asked to sing all of the verses when we get a little later on in the service.
At the beginning of each service, we're going to offer a time for connection and community and lifting up the ways we connect with each other here in the congregation. And each Sunday of the month, it's going to be a little bit different. But this Sunday, I want to invite us into a time of community greeting. We've done this once or twice in the past, but it's been a while. And so I want to give you all just a few moments to rise and move around a little bit and introduce yourself to someone that you don't know very well. Say hello to just one or two people in the congregation before we return to our seats. So go ahead and stand up if you would like. If you want to stay seated, just put your hand over your heart and say hello to folks. Goodness gracious! You are all ready for coffee hour today. I'm going to invite you all to return to your seats this morning. I love to hear the sound of you all beginning these conversations and connections, and of course they can be continued after the service during our coffee hour. It's wonderful to see you all getting to know each other here at the Unitarian Society. So I'd like to invite any kids who are with us this weekend. I know we have some of our youth traveling, and we'll talk a little bit about that later in this service. And I know it's a long weekend, right? Monday is a school holiday. But if there's some kids who want to come up here with me, I have some questions that I would like to ask. And of course, those questions aren't just for the youth, they're for everybody. But come on up and join me on the rug. Because I have somebody that I'm going to introduce to us today. And I would like you to come and help me welcome her if you want to come on up. Yeah, anybody can come on up, actually. You don't just have to be a kid. You can be a kid at heart if you want to get a closer look at our special guest, who's not going to be a guest here for much longer. Come on up. Carolyn, you want to come forward? I want to introduce you to Carolyn Bierke. Carolyn is someone we're all going to get to know pretty well over the next little while, because Carolyn is working to become a Unitarian Universalist minister, and she is going to be doing her ministerial internship with our congregation. So before we hear from Carolyn a little bit later on in this service, I thought it might be a good idea to talk about how do you become a minister in the Unitarian Universalist congregation. That's what I do. Some of you know that. Some of you, this might be news to you that I'm a minister, right? But I'm everyone's minister here. Any ideas how you end up with this job that I do here every week? What are some ideas? How do you think you might be? Go ahead and shout out. What's the process for becoming a minister? You go to school. Who here has been to school? Yeah, right? So you go to school to become a Unitarian Universalist minister. In fact, you go to graduate school and get something called a Master's of Divinity, which sounds very grand. Carolyn has her Master's of Divinity. I have mine, and that's one of the things you have to do, but it's not the only thing. What are some... A congregation has to sponsor you, right? So a congregation like this one is the body of people, the group of people who get to say, we think you would be a great minister, and we want to vote to support you in this work. So that is a really critical part of becoming a minister, is getting to know people, getting to know you all, and so that we can then say, yes, we will support Carolyn in her work to become a minister. What else do you have to do? an apprenticeship, an internship like Carolyn just started this week. You have to partner with somebody who's been a minister for a while like me. We're going to be working together to learn the ins and outs because it's not just Sundays, folks. Yeah. What else? There's other things too. Study. Read a lot of books. Who likes to read books? That's a good step becoming a minister, is you gotta like to read books because they give you a reading list that's many, many, many pages long. There's one other really core part that they ask you to do, and this is something that maybe a lot of people aren't aware of. You don't just have to do an internship in a congregation. Where else do you have to do an internship? In the community, specifically in a hospital. Everyone who wants to become a Unitarian Universalist minister has to spend some time working in a hospital as a chaplain. A chaplain is somebody who is with people when they're going through a hard time. And because part of ministry is learning how to be with people when they're feeling sad or hurt or need help, being in a hospital is a pretty good place to learn how to do that work. So if any of you ever get into a time when you are feeling like you might need a little extra help, no matter how old you are, your ministers are people who can be here. If you let us know, we want to be here for you. And so that's what it takes to become a Unitarian Universalist minister. It typically takes about 4 years to go through this process, sometimes 5 or more, depending on how long it all takes, before you're ready to go out into the world and be ordained. So I'm so delighted that we're going to be working with Carolyn, and we'll be talking a little bit more about what that means, and I'm so delighted we get to welcome her today. So now I'm going to send you all off to your activities, out in our religious exploration down in Star King or in your classes, and let us sing together as the kids go out. We hold you in our love as you go, as you go. In your heart be at peace as you go. To nurture the spark of your precious love. We hold you in our love as you go. So now maybe you figured out why I wanted to sing all 5 verses of that first hymn, because the 5th verse talks about ministry. It talks about the shared ministry we have together, not just the work of the ministers, but the work of the ministers and the people in the congregation as a collaborative journey. And that's what ministerial internship really is about. Over the course of my 12 years here, it is remarkable how many leaders we have seen emerge from this congregation. 2 members of this community have found their calling here and have gone on to pursue Unitarian Universalist ministry, Nika Eaton and Laura Young, who are now out in the world doing great work. 4 members of this congregation, since I've been here, have gone on to become professional religious educators. Stephen Lovelace, Lauren Wyeth, Allison Stewart Wyeth, and our very own Charlotte Bagante, who works here in this congregation. In 2018, we became a teaching congregation when we welcomed Nick Filzen as our intern minister then, and Nick is now ordained and doing great work in Georgia. And so now today, it's time to welcome another intern minister here to learn and grow with us. Carolyn, would you want to come on up here with me? So Carolyn will be here with us for the next 18 months, working on the final steps of her path toward ordination. And we are fortunate because she lives nearby in Thousand Oaks and started her path to Unitarian Universalist ministry with the congregation in Ventura, where she served and is still serving as the music director for that congregation. And it's there that she found out that this was your faith home, and not just that, but also your calling to work in the world. Teaching congregations like ours have a very, very important role in the life of our tradition. Without this work, we would not be able to move forward the ministry that we need among us. And so now I'm going to invite us all to enter into this partnership of learning with Carolyn in the coming years. Would you please rise in body and spirit? I have a question for you. People of the Unitarian Society of Santa Barbara, here in this room and here wherever you are, do you commit to this partnership of learning and promise to support, encourage, and collaborate with Carolyn over these next 18 months, that she might grow and thrive as a minister in our tradition and bring her unique gifts to a world in need of the compassionate and life-giving work of our congregations. If you are so agreed, please say, "We will." Thank you. You may be seated. And now, Carolyn, would you like to offer a few words?
Wow. Hello, wonderful community. What an absolute joy it is to be here with you as your new intern minister. I have received such a warm welcome from Reverend Julia and the entire staff this week, and I am truly grateful to be part of this incredible community. In reflecting on my first week here, I'm reminded of the beautiful words of John O'Donohue, which I've adapted for our journey here together. May we awaken to the mystery of being here. May we receive great encouragement when new frontiers beckon. May we respond to the call of our gifts and find the courage to follow their path. May the flame of anger free us from falsity. May the warmth of heart keep our presence aflame and banish anxiety from our midst. May our outer dignity mirror an inner dignity of soul. May we take time to celebrate the quiet miracles that seek no attention. And may we experience each day as a sacred gift woven around the heart of wonder. So with this blessing, here's to us, our shared dignity, celebrating those quiet miracles and experiencing each day as an incredible gift that it is. I'm eagerly looking forward to embarking on this journey with all of you, hearts wide open and full of wonder. Thank you.
And I'm going to invite you to take a seat in the front because our choir has a special welcome for you. I'd like to invite us now into a time of prayer and reflection and meditation. I invite you to get in touch once again with your breath and your body. Settle yourself wherever you are. If you want to hold your hands open softly in your lap, or close your eyes, or just soften your gaze, however it is that you become aware of that larger life that moves through you and connects you to all who are gathered. This morning, I want to bring into this time of meditation the travelers from our congregation and community who are on their way home from the La Cubina migrant shelter in Mexicali. This weekend, a delegation of 6 youth and their accompanying adults from this congregation, as well as from the Beatitudes Society of Santa Barbara and Trinity Episcopal right around the corner, traveled down to Mexicali to partner with this shelter that we have come to know over these past couple of years, to bring some joy and fun to the lives of the children who are waiting at the border, and to bear witness and to stand in solidarity with those who are traveling in search of shelter and safety. Charla Brigante, Kier Zecker, Christina Boardman, Emma Parent, Cassia Shive Hamilton, Quinn Hartman, Leland Reardon, Ruby and Oliver Bargill, Hillary Peedy, and Jeanette Love will return home with stories and open hearts, share with us their experiences so that we may become more aware of our interconnection with all of those among us. And especially, I would like to hold in our hearts this morning those they have met on this journey, that their paths be safe from this point forward, that joy may be their companion and love lend them strength. And may all the travelers know that they are not alone, but held in compassion by many, even as they may feel targeted by the fear and anger of a few. May all who find themselves in harm's way find shelter and safety in a place like La Cubina, a place that respects their inherent worth and dignity, that offers space for healing and hope, and cultivates peace for those who have known too much of violence and war. May we all find loving companions on our journeys. Let us enter into a time of quiet reflection together.
Hello again. Like many people, I play mind games with myself. Part memory test, part history lesson, part moment of personal reflection. I learned this from my father, who out of the blue at the dinner table might suddenly ask, to no one in particular, "Where were you when you heard that Adlai Stevenson had died?" Or "What were you doing when the Yankees won the 1956 World Series?" He was not so much questioning my mother and me, he didn't expect an answer, as creating his own record of events through which he marked what was notable in his life and in his world. I began doing the same fairly early on, situating myself in the major events of the day to help me contemplate whether and how these moments impacted me and the world around me. I also did this with more personal, equally but differently meaningful markers, such as where was I when I learned my beloved grandmother had died, or when I found out that I had finally made the dean's list. When the events of a given day threatened to overwhelm me, I turned to the "where were you when" question to help me ground myself. It also served as a reminder that I was connected, however tenuously and at whatever distance, to the universe beyond my immediate experience. When I realized that I was worship associate for a service focusing on the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I gave myself permission to play the "where were you then, where were you when" game once again. Trite as it may sound, I remember what I'm about to relate to you as if it happened just yesterday. It's so clear that I not only remember in my mind, but also through my body, a visceral sense of the weather, the time of day, the light in the room. It was the night of April 4th, 1968. The day had been unseasonably warm for New York at the beginning of spring. I was sitting at the kitchen table in our fifth-floor tenement walk-up in what the city boosters were calling the East Village, an effort to gentrify what the neighborhood truly was, the immigrant-heavy Lower East Side. I was finishing an assignment for school, no doubt at the last minute, when the phone rang. This was, of course, pre-home computers, tablets, smartphones, the internet, all of the communication modalities we now take for granted. We didn't have a TV, and the radio was in another room and it was turned off. I answered the phone, only to hear my normally chill and under control mother sobbing. "Dr. King's been shot," she said between tears. "He's gone." My mother worked for the National Urban League, and almost before the news of the assassination hit the wires, the leaders of the major civil rights organizations had been informed and quickly got the word out to their staff. I sat there stunned, unable to process the news and unable to comfort my mother, who by this time was more distressed than I had ever experienced her. Getting off the phone, I realized that this event would change the world, and probably not for the better. Dr. King was, as Gwendolyn Brooks so eloquently put it, quote, "a prose poem, a tragic grace, a warm music," unquote. Dr. King was a man of peace cut down in an act of unspeakable violence, a violence that marked a turning point in the reaction to the movement he had nurtured. The next morning, rather than going to class, I headed for the student union where televisions had been set up in the lobby and cafeteria. The union was crowded as students, faculty, and staff jostled for space to watch what was happening in the aftermath of this brutal act. What we saw from the very privileged and safe space of a university building were displays of anguish and despair unlike anything I had ever witnessed. People so distraught that the only outlet seemed to be lashing out at the police, at the merchants who preyed upon their communities, at institutions that did not serve their needs and that Dr. King was trying so desperately to reform. It might seem a bit untoward for me to be touching on death when this weekend is a celebration marking a life. To me, however, Dr. King's life and death are inextricably bound together, bracketing the critical lessons about the possible direction our country might take. As we struggle, both within ourselves and within the larger community, to come to terms with and attempt to overcome the destructive and painful legacy of racism and white supremacy, honoring how Dr. King lived and coming to a critical understanding of how and why he died serves as a beacon guiding us towards what we hope are our better angels. I want to end by once again turning to the Gwendolyn Brooks poem that accompanied this morning's chalice lighting. His word still burns the center of the sun, above the thousands and the 100,000s. The word was justice, it was spoken. So it shall be spoken, so it shall be done. Thank you.
As I mentioned, every week we give away a portion of our offering to a program or project that lives our values in the world. And one of the values of this congregation is interdependence and the need to be in community with the world. One of the ways we do that is by making sure we have opportunities to go out into the world, particularly for our youth, to be of service, to learn and grow and deepen their connection. For many years, we've been partnering with a project called Suminungwa on the Hopi and Navajo reservations. And every other year, we send a delegation from this congregation to work with a community there that have become dear friends in the process. This month, our outreach offering will go to support Suminungwa and the long time collaboration of this congregation with that work. So please give as generously as you are able, and please read with me the affirmation of gratitude and giving. Let us be grateful when we are able to give, for many do not have that privilege. Let us be grateful for those who share their gifts with us, for we are enriched by their giving. And let us be grateful even for our needs, so that we may learn from the generosity of others. Thank you, choir, for sharing music with us this morning. As we celebrate the life and legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. this weekend, it seems fitting to remember that movements for justice do not arise like the goddess Athena fully formed from the head of Zeus, but rather they evolve in conversation with all the leaders that have come before them, shaping and articulating time and again the ethical and moral commitments we human beings wrestle with age after age. So before we get to Dr. King, I want to go back a bit and start with one of the activist leaders from the 1800s that has been on our mind quite a bit lately here at the Unitarian Society, Frances Ellen Watkins Harper. A name I hope we are all becoming more familiar with. Because a month or so ago, members of this congregation cast their final vote on the name that would be added to these sanctuary windows to replace the name of Jefferson on this window right here to my right, and I am now delighted to say that Harper will be honored among the other Unitarian ancestors here that remind us of the history of our tradition. There is a lot to say about Harper. Last summer, a visiting colleague of mine gave an excellent sermon about her, which I will recommend to you. It's on our YouTube page, and you can find out a lot more about her life and legacy by listening to that. But I want to give you just a brief introduction or refresh your memory about who she was. She was born a free black woman in Baltimore, Maryland in 1825. She published her first book of poetry by the age of 20. And she went on to become a highly respected novelist, poet, public speaker, activist for abolition, women's suffrage, and education reform. She worked for the Underground Railroad and became known as the mother of African American journalism for her writing. She died in 1911, in a world on its way to being transformed by the work of people like her, who worked relentlessly to recognize the rights of all people to live and flourish. She became a member of the Unitarian Church of Philadelphia in 1870, often reading her poetry from their pulpit, although she also retained her membership in the African Methodist Episcopal AME Church as well. The words the choir just sang were taken from a speech given by Frances Ellen Watkins Harper in May of 1866 at the 11th National Women's Rights Convention in New York City. She was the only black woman on the platform, addressing the crowd alongside Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton. It was a rousing speech, and she did not mince words. She called on the white women in the audience to pull themselves out of, and I quote, their airy nothings and selfishness, and take up the cause of universal suffrage. After highlighting our fundamental human interdependence, she went on to say, I do not believe that giving women the ballot is immediately going to cure all the ills of life. I do not believe that white women are dewdrops just exhaled from the skies. I think that like men, they may be divided into three classes, the good, the bad, and the indifferent. The good would vote according to their convictions and principles. The bad as dictated by prejudice or malice. The indifferent will vote on the strongest side of the question with the winning party. You white women here speak of rights, I speak of wrongs. A couple of years later, a major split would occur in the suffrage movement, and the women with whom she appeared on that stage would be on the other side of a chasm that opened up over whether to fight for the right of black people to be included in the struggle to expand the vote. As the fight over the 15th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution heated up, many activist white women invoked racist tropes to argue against it because it extended the right to vote only to black men and did not advance the cause of suffrage for white women like themselves. During that time, Harper worked closely with another one of the people whose names appear on our windows, Julia Ward Howe, right back there on that window, because both of them were founding members of the American Women's Suffrage Association, the group that split off from Stanton and Caddy's organization. The 15th Amendment was ratified in 1870 without including women, and it would be another 50 years before the 19th Amendment and full suffrage was passed. Dr. Megan Bailey, an anthropologist and cultural resource specialist for the National Park Service. I love that we have cultural resource specialists working in our National Park Service. In her work on the ratification of the 14th and 15th Amendments, observed that black women in the movement at the time tended to focus on human rights and universal suffrage more broadly than anyone else at the time, because of their unique position, experiencing both race and gender-based oppression and violence. Black women like Harper saw and understood the work very differently from their peers, refusing to compartmentalize their experience into hierarchical categories, but seeing everything as interconnected. As Harper and our choir just sang, we are all bound up together in one great bundle of humanity. And society cannot trample on the weakest and feeblest of its members without receiving the curse in its own soul, she said. It wouldn't be until 1898 that Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw would coin the term intersectionality to encapsulate this idea that Harper spoke of, that African American women are at the nexus of intersecting power dynamics and therefore have a perspective that is necessary to any conversation about how we go about dismantling systems of oppression. Harper was articulating this in her own way in 1866. And I do not think it was unrelated to her becoming a Unitarian in 1870. This concept of interdependence, that all people are worthy and that our fates are bound up together, is a central theme throughout the history of our faith. Rather than believing that people were born sinful and divided into those who go to heaven and those who go to hell, Unitarians espouse the fundamental goodness of humanity and the idea that we all have inherent worth and dignity and that we are united in our human experience. We all share this life and we inhabit the same existence on this planet. A religion that believes in interdependence and inherent worth undercut the very argument of white male supremacy that slavery was founded upon. Harper found something in this faith that fed her spirit. Even as Unitarians themselves were not and still are not perfect, I hate to break it to you, we have our own struggles to overcome the racism in the wider culture, even to this day. But fast forward almost exactly 100 years, and you can hear this same conversation about interdependence continue in the words of Reverend Dr. King. King was no stranger, of course, to the work of those who had gone before him. He was very clear that he stood in this stream of history, taking up the inheritance of those who had been struggling for their freedom for generations. Dr. King was also no stranger to Unitarian Universalist theology, having studied it while he was in seminary in Boston and attending Unitarian Universalist services from time to time with his wife Coretta and speaking at the Unitarian Universalist Association General Assembly in 1966. It is quite possible that he was familiar with and had read the work of Frances Harper at some point in his career. And certainly the ideas she shared resonated with his own life. In his final book, written in 1967, titled "Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community?" Sounds like a question we are still asking. He talks at length about the idea of inescapable mutuality, that single garment of destiny that keeps us connected inextricably to one another. He says, in the final analysis, the rich must not ignore the poor because both rich and poor are tied together. They entered into the same mysterious gateway of human birth and into the same adventure of mortal life. All men are interdependent. Every nation is an heir of a vast treasury of ideas and labor to which both the living and the dead of all nations have contributed. Whether we realize it or not, each of us lives eternally in the red. We are everlasting debtors to known and unknown, men and women. When we arise in the morning, when we go into the bathroom, where we reach for a sponge, which is provided for us by a Pacific Islander, we reach for a soap that is created for us by a European. Then at the table, we drink coffee, which is provided for us by a South American, or tea by a Chinese, or cocoa by a West African. Before we leave for our jobs, we are already beholden to more than half the world, he said. And continued, in a real sense, all life is interrelated. We are inevitably our brother's keeper because we are our brother's brother. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. We are our brother's keeper because we are our brother's brother. Harper, 100 years before King, wrote a letter to a friend which kind of echoed this sentiment. "Oh, is it not a privilege," she said, "if you are sisterless and lonely," because she was an only child, "if you are sisterless and lonely, to be a sister to the human race, and to place your heart where it may throb close to downtrodden humanity." To be a sister to the human race our brother's keeper because we are our brother's brother, sister or brother or sibling. This is a way of saying there is a fundamental kinship that we ignore at our peril. And that global interconnection that King spoke of is, of course, now more true than it ever was. So how do we continue to trace this thought forward? How do we build upon the work and the legacy of these ancestors that inspire us? What does it mean to take interdependence to heart? To really commit to it as a core part of our spiritual lives? There is no one right answer for this question. You will have to discover this day by day by day yourselves. It is an ongoing, lifelong practice, not a finish line to cross or an achievement to cross off a list. Mutuality is a way of being that must constantly be reaffirmed. It's why you have to come back here more than once, right? To build community takes investment and time and attention. Building this mutuality, how we live day by day, it then informs the strategies we employ in our work to build a more beloved world, informed by our awareness of our fundamental kinship with one another. Mutuality asks us to be rigorous in that spiritual practice, which results in the dismantling of hierarchies of oppression. It reminds us that we need to take seriously and listen to the contributions of those whose lives are at the center of the struggle, especially when we might live some distance from the suffering we are trying to alleviate. It's why we don't just, for example, talk about the need for immigration justice, but we send our youth and their adult friends to La Cobina to be with folks in the struggle itself. It's why we keep rehanging that Black Lives Matter banner every single time it gets torn down, and it has been taken down 4 times since we hung it, and we've replaced it each and every time, and now it's hanging in the window in a slightly more secure location, but still visible from the street, because we are reaffirming the fact that the work is not done. When King calls out the white liberals from the Birmingham jail for being too slow to act, or when Harper uses her platform to remind the white women in the audience that they have an obligation to move beyond self-interest, then taking interdependence seriously means we have to listen. We have to set aside our impulse for reactivity and self-defense and ask, am I willing to be changed by what I am hearing? Am I willing to allow myself to be changed by what I am hearing, by the commitments that I have made to kinship? So no matter who you are or where you find yourself in life, at the center of some struggles and at the margins of others, confronting the fact of our interdependence challenges us to put in the work and to pay attention to when our own self-interest, our own fear, our own ego acts as a barrier that would keep us apart. There's this quote from the 1970s that I go back to over and over again from an Aboriginal rights group in Queensland, Australia. And they say, if you have come here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. If you have come here because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. This gift of mutuality levels the ground, reminds us not to be tricked into acting out of those same hierarchies that we seek to dismantle. Instead, is a call to live into that truth that generations of spiritual leaders and activists have tried to impart to us and have died for. That truth that we are all kindred on this earth and that we need one another to get free together. May we live into the reality of that truth. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen. Let us rise and sing together again, We Would Be One. The words are on your screen, or it's number 318 in the gray hymnal. We would be one. So stay right where you are, and if you want to put your hand over your heart, or if you have permission to hold hand with your neighbor, or hold your hand open, however it is that you get connected and feel that interdependence that we are committing ourselves to. And as you go out into this beautiful and heartbreaking world, may the light of love shine upon you, out from within you, be gracious unto you, and bring you peace. For this is the day we are given. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. And let us call out a blessing.